Blog Talk Radio.
We welcome the night.
Horror Night Oasis, a radio show where we discuss all the latest movies and news from the world of horror. Joining me, as always, for this special occasion is my co-host, Ian. Ian, are you there?
I am here.
It's been a few weeks, but how have you been, sir?
Tired.
Believe me, today, with everything that went down today on my end, yes, I'm right there with you. But we're persevering, we're fighting off sleep because this is a special occasion, as I mentioned earlier, because there's a couple things interesting happening here in one episode, Ian. We're closing in on 10 years of doing the show, which we've mentioned previously, and it's episode 300. And that is a big occasion.
Both of which are, yeah.
You know, we might not be the biggest or most well-known show out there, but I think we do a lot of interesting things, and this is definitely one of those tonight because, you know, I didn't want to do anything, you know, normal for a 300th episode. You know, I always want to go the more obscure route, and I figured, you know what, let's drive through the Boneyard. And there's been a lot of films I've discovered over the years, and we reviewed on Boneyard episodes. And for those listening, just maybe for the first time, a Boneyard review or a review from the Boneyard is where we review a film that is pretty obscure, rare, scarce, hard to find, and somehow I managed to track a copy down through various means. It's in my personal collection. And, again, you have to thank the wonders of eBay. And just doing a little sleuthing here and there. And that's what happened with tonight's film because I'm just going to say it. We're probably going to be the only people that are going to review this. This is just going to be our special review of this film for tonight. And it's interesting, to say the least, because this is from technically a well-known cult director. Because he's done a lot of stuff, you know, in the 80s, you know, through the 90s. Michael Fischa, or Fischa, whatever, you know, last name is. But he directed, in the horror genre, he directed Death Spa from 1989. That's pretty well known now. It kind of has a cult status to it. And he did My Mom is a Werewolf. So that's another one. I think that one's still relegated on VHS. But tonight's feature, again, it's this well-known. Well, again, well-known is in quotations because if you're in the horror community and the horror world, you kind of know these things already. But for the average person, you know, it even as a normal horror fan, you don't really know the guy's name who directed Death Spa or anything. You have to really deep dive into that. And when I came across this film, and we'll get into the review here shortly. I was like, what is this? Because it was just listed. It was a buy it now It was cheap. I'm like, you know what? We're doing this because again, who knows how many copies of this actually exist? Because this film came out in 2005, and it was, I'm assuming it's self-released. Because, again, 2005, that's that's almost 20 years ago. A couple of years, that's 20 years ago. And I was in high school, in that time in 2005. So this is one of those that's just been floating around the ether of the world, randomly showed up on eBay, and it is in my home. And we watched it, and before we get into the review, Ian, I just want to go back to what we've done over the years and say that, again, episode 300, yeah, it's a big deal. We could have had, and we mentioned before, we could have had a few more here and there, but, it could have been sooner. But we've had all kinds of ups and downs with the show over the years, and just to get to 300 in general, yeah, we could, like I said, we could have done it sooner. But I felt like a lot of constraints get into the way life. Again, Ian had a child in the span of the show. So it's crazy to see, how me and Ian cross paths just that random day into 2013, meeting at a random comic book toy store convention set up by in a town, and here we are. I get in line, you're standing in front of me, and then it was meant to be for some reason. It was just our friendship just budded from there, and we just became buddies and kicked back and forth on the Facebook group. And then again, at the time I wasn't doing anything with the radio show, and it was just, I felt at the time that I wanted to get back into the swing of things because, again, I wasn't doing anything. I was losing interest in the radio, doing anything by myself because, again, I've had multiple co-hosts, earlier on before crossing paths with Ian. And, I had fun and I enjoyed those shows, and those are some fun shows I had. But I felt like I've had more fun and discussed a lot of things because, again, I was just doing normal stuff, reviews here and there, of like, again, films that are out there. But with this show, and once we found our footing with the interviews and coming up with all these interesting concepts for radio reviews and the movie reviews and the Boneyards, and just where I, put all my effort into finding like things that, I love and, in the horror genre. And just wanting to share that with people. And again, to look at Ian and where he started at is just, just a casual horror fan and watcher, and just where where you've ended up at. And we've discussed this numerous times over the years. And it's just, it's a, I don't want to say I groomed you or anything, but again, I kind of did because, I was this well-known, I'm not well-known, but I'm just saying I was this connoisseur of everything horror-related. Of horror movies, and and just like having you under my wing and like sharing these obscure movies with someone else again, because again, no one else is out there looking for this stuff, and just like me and you, we're in this special plane of existence where like we went through the trenches and watched 8 Ball Clown. We went through the trenches and watched all these random movies that are like chiseled into our brains. But we've persevered, and we've done 300 shows, and it's been a fucking experience, to say the least. And again, we've mentioned it before, but I wouldn't share it with anybody else because I think our friendship's pretty damn close, just through horror, and it's amazing what the horror genre can do. And again, we're not just tooting our own horns because it's episode 300. I mean, of course we have to talk about it. It's a special occasion for both of us. And we have to, go down memory lane. But it's just, 10 years of, talking over the phone, meeting up, we've only had like 2-3 times that we've met up in person. And, our friendships, online, of course. But it's just like these special moments here where we get talking back and forth. And it's very special. And I love it, and I wouldn't change it for the world. And, again, like we've discussed and discovered a lot of shit, and good and bad, and it's just nothing really compares to just talking about the genre, and especially discovering and sort of like finding these hidden, I'm not going to say gems, but just like these hidden films that just laying dormant, and that's the whole reason for the Boneyard. I figured that that's the best way to celebrate episode 300 than to doing something so fucking obscure from 2005 from a well-known cutter with no other reviews, no information. It just screams that's a special episode, and I've been saving this one for an occasion. I've been wanting to do this for the show because, again, when we do the Boneyard, we don't know anything going in until we watch the film and come on the radio show and discuss it. So, again, I didn't know anything about it. There's like I said, no information except for the director, and here we are. But, Ian, I'll let you go a little bit, and then we'll get into the review because we really need to get into the review. But, just like thoughts in general, and then we'll, just quickly, and then we'll get into the review.
Well, like what you were saying, like I didn't, when I started the show, I never really watched a whole lot of horror because, I didn't know. I always got a little nervous when I would go to the section, and there's just so many options. And nobody I knew really was into horror, and I always wanted to get into it. And then I was like, you know what? I started my little journey, my own little personal journey, and that led me to do a horror movie night where I could, watch new movies. That was the whole goal, and that's, how him, Havoc and I met. And, I was like, hey, come check out my horror show. And then you messaged me and was like, hey, you want to do a radio show to promote your thing? And I was like, yeah. And then after that ended, we just kept going. And it's just weird to think that it's been 10 years. We got, all the interviews and everything we've had. It's just been a wild ride. But let's, I guess we'll get into the review now.
Okay, well, yeah, exactly. Let's do this because we got time constraints on us, damn it. Mascara Diablo is our film, as I mentioned, from 2005, from the Death Spa, the director of Death Spa, Michael Fischa. And, again, this is 2005. There's a lot of limitations, and this was, honestly, it's pretty, when you watch it, it's pretty factual that he filmed this in his house, a friend's house, somewhere. So there's a lot of constraints and budget limitations, and they're trying their hardest. I will say that much. There's a lot of people involved in this film, in the script, and I think there's some issues, but we'll get into that here a little bit. But Mascara Diablo, we are introduced to, again, the story is not the most thought out. I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm just saying that there's a few holes in the story, and things just kind of are there. So we're introduced to this, I wouldn't say they're archaeologists, but they're scientists in a way, and this mask, they're in Costa Rica, and this mask comes in from the ocean onto shore, and they pick it up, and they look at it, and they're just like, of course, they're studying like what this mask could be, and so they're doing all this research, and they get back home, I'm assuming in California, and they're trying to do more, digging and unearthing of this specific mask, and they're finding all this information about it, and we'll get into the specifics of that here in a minute. And so we have Taylor, Dr. Taylor. I don't even know if his first name was, maybe it was Nolan. I don't exactly know. There's a lot of names being thrown around, so it was kind of hard to put a face to a name when there's like, oh, we got to get Mr. Rich, and someone else called him Rich, and then that's Karen, or that's this doctor, and that's Dr. Emma. Like, okay, there's too many names. And that's another thing. Like, not like first we complained there's not enough names, and now we complain there's too many. But it's like they didn't really give enough time to let you think in names. They're just like, oh, we're getting ready to Brad and Jeff, and this is Lynn and Blair, and then we got the other 3 people coming in. I don't even know their names because, like, it's too fast. He just wouldn't let anything breathe for a second. But Lynn is the daughter of Dr. Taylor, who found the mask, and Karen is the friend of Dr. Taylor, and they're doing the research. So they're doing more research. Dr. Taylor has to go off on a trip to do something. It's not explained. He just has to go away for a reason. And so Lynn, the daughter, and her friend Blair decide to have a sort of a home party with, again, Brad, Jeff, and a couple other people. And they're there, they're doing their thing, and basically the mask that they found comes to life because there's a history with the mask. And, again, not to get into too much specifics, but, again, where this film's so obscure, the mask later on is revealed that it is made by the tree, the forbidden tree in the Garden of Eden, and it is basically a possessed evil mask by the devil, basically. Assumingly, it's possessed by the devil because it is the forbidden fruit tree. So the mask, again, becomes sentient, starts talking, projecting things, and starts chasing them through the house through a POV shot and attaches itself, a la, again, a mask, and that person is then possessed and starts to try to kill the other teenagers, kids, or whatever you will, people in the house. And that's technically the general plot of the film, is where they're all in the house trying to fight off the mask. The mask comes on, they start attacking people, the mask comes off, the mask scurries across the floors, hiding, looking in the windows, and they're trying their hardest to figure out more on the mask by looking through notes and papers that, again, the dad, Lynn's dad left and Karen left, and they're trying to do all this other thing. And then there's another subplot of Rich, who is also part of the team that found the mask, and they're in an RV in the middle of nowhere, him and his friend, and then just this random guy pops up who has this back history of knowing the mask because it's when his brother found it in the World War II in a building in a box, and they have to go through, like, backstory and setting things up. And, again, there's a lot of information. And, like I said earlier, it has ideas. And, again, for something this low budget, again, it's like very, it's not, I'm not going to say it's messy, but it's kind of like convoluted in parts, but it's just like parts are missing. There's this one part where Mr. Rich comes back and like, oh, we had, the only things here is this, and Karen was here, and then I'm thinking back, like, when did they ever see Karen? Because, like, when they're in the house, she never, I watched the film twice just to make sure, like, when did she come across in that house? Because she's in the house in the basement, but where did she come from, and how did she get there? Because she's just there in the basement. And so, like, there's a little holes and inconsistencies sprinkled throughout the film, and it's just like, where did that person come from? Because it's just like, okay, but whatever. But for the story in general, I didn't think it was too bad. It just had a lot of limitations, and, like, you could, a lot of technical problems and issues where, like, you could see that it was just shot in someone's house, let's try to do this, and it was, again, self-released. I mean, it shows that in spades. And, again, I'm not going to really hold that against it because that's what they were trying to, they're just trying to make a movie. Someone else, like, not privy to the information, like me and Ian, again, we're probably going to be the only people to see this for a while, until another random person possibly finds it and it comes up or gets a new release somehow. I have no idea. But, like, people are going to look at this and like, oh, my God, this is the worst thing, terrible, it's shitty. Like, again, not holding that against it. I mean, if you don't watch a lot of low-budget stuff, it's going to be pretty bad. But, again, I didn't think it was too bad. It had ideas, but it just didn't have the means to portray them in the right means. It was just very technical and very, like, now we're back in the bedroom, and now we're here, and then it was just, like, all over the place, and they were trying their hardest to make this, but the scope and the scale of what they wanted to do, making this contained house, just felt, in a sense, cheap, and just, like, again, shooting on weekends maybe, and just, like, it just had that aura to it, and it, like, again, they tried their damnedest to make something, and again, there's parts of it that aren't too bad for a Killer Mask movie, and there's not that many Killer Mask films, but again, it's just like they tried, and it just, like, I felt like it could have been better, and if they had, again, a more means to an end with the film, it could have worked out a little more than expected. But for what it wasn't exactly the worst thing that me and Ian, personally, I've seen on the show. I mean, we've sat through some shit. I just think that, like, the limitations at hand, because the story is actually interesting, and where it goes is neat. It's just like everything else in between that's sprinkled is just, it's just like conversation. Like, what are we going to do? Let's do this. Let's do that. And it's just that over and over and over. And, like, again, it has a decent, okay pace to it. It's not like it's dragging on. I mean, they get to the point rather quick. And it just goes on with, like, a lot of nothing, and just, like, we're all in a circle looking around in a book and looking at this and looking at that and talking this and talking that. And then, like, the conversations between Rich and Lynn's father where he's away, and just, like, a lot of just, like, unnecessary, establishing shots, really. Like, oh, we're almost at the house. We'll call you back in 30 minutes. And then, like, 2 seconds go by, like, where are you at? And, just, like, trying to, establish stuff. And not that that's a bad thing, but it just felt like, especially when, like, he's in the RV and, like, he's going to, like, oh, there's a payphone, let me call him. Like, we're almost there. Like, okay. Like, we needed to do that. But, again, I didn't think it was too bad of a film because I can see, I see the scope and the scale of what they were trying to do, but it just did not work with their limitations. Yeah. And, again, I didn't think it was a bad film. A lot of people will probably watch this like, oh, my God, it's terrible. And, again, it's obscure as shit, and not many people are going to know about it, like besides us. But, again, for what it is and again, the Boneyard side of things, it's one of the okay ones. It's not like, just completely average. I mean, they tried to make something interesting, and I just felt like it just didn't quite come up to par with what it needed to be because of, a weekend shoot film, and just like a lot of stuff, like, was not, plots just, like, did not converge well with, like, oh, like, now the doctor's, like, she's in the basement, she's not there, and then, like, all the other things coming into effect. But, Ian, I'll let you talk, and then we'll go back and forth real quick.
All right, yeah, like you said, it wasn't a bad film. There was definitely some parts where I was struggling to, like, pay attention to it. Just because it was just, like, like you said, there was just a whole lot of nothing in, like, a big chunk of some of the part of the movie. And, but I do agree, like, they did try with this one. And, I mean, while there was a whole lot of nothing and kind of, nothing really grabbing your attention all that much, it still was a pretty quick watch. It didn't feel like, I didn't feel like it took a million years to end, like some of the movies we've watched, but, like, it definitely, had its hiccups. Obviously, with the low budget and everything, you can't really fault any of the, graphics and stuff like that, and especially some of the props, like the head at the end. I thought that was pretty nice.
I got the fucking head. Where's the fucking box? I got the fucking head. Where's the fucking box?
I started laughing at that. I was like, that's amazing. I was like, that right there is going to be a quote. And I mean, it has its moments. It has a charm to it. Like, I mean, I don't know if I'll ever watch it again. I'm not opposed to it, but I don't think I would, do it on my own unless somebody asked. But it's fine. It's not I didn't hate myself after watching it. I like the lore that they were trying to build, and but everything kind of just seemed really easy.
Yeah.
That was
like I said, they tried with the lore, and I like the lore and the backstory, and like what you have to do with it, and how they found it, and stuff like that. And it's just like, it just really didn't do that much. Like, oh, when someone's wearing the mask, you need to cut their head off, and no, simple enough. And the mask wasn't really all that threatening. I mean, yeah, it was, but it's just like, it's a mask. But they're trying. I
just want to know why so it was hunting these kids down, but like in the same house, but it had like transporting powers, and it couldn't just get to these kids. Like, that was one thing I was like, what is going on? Like, it can appear in a computer, it can talk over the phone, but it can't go through a door. I was like, what? I was like, okay, well, this is just gonna happen because it does. This is just what it is, just because. And it's a movie. You got to turn your brain off, and because you'll just ruin the experience for yourself.
Just again, a lot of parts just felt like they were just missing too. Just again, that whole scene was like, oh, the doctor lady was here. Like, what? When? When was the doctor lady there? That's the one thing is just I can't really wrap my mind around, because, like, yeah, she's there in the basement later on when they come across her, but, like, never earlier in the film does he have any interaction with the Karen. And, like, oh, she was here, and then the pizza guy, like, what pizza guy? Like, did I miss something with a pizza guy? It's like,
I think you did, because I saw that. The pizza guy came in. I know he came into the door, but I also don't know what happened with him, because, I know the mask gets put on his face, and then, like, I don't know what happens after that. Like, I was very confused with what happened. After the pizza guy got the mask on his face. A few little
inconsistencies there where it just, like, felt like they didn't give it, again, not enough, like, oh, this happened, move on. Hurry up, move, next thing. It's like, it was kind of too quick for its own
Yeah,
name.
no,
It
that's...
was like...
And, like, the whole movie was built up, and then the ending just felt like, oh, that's all they had to do?
Yeah.
Also, like, when they turned the computer on, the mask went off of the face and went into the computer. So I was just like, why? I was like, I guess it's to make it not, last, to make it last a little longer, I guess. But, like, I was just like, this doesn't make sense. But it is what it is. Like, everything just happens so fast that if you, like, look away, you'll miss it. And I thought that was one of the bigger pacing issues I had, was that they put it out too quick on some parts, dragged some, some of the good action stuff was over before, like, right as it started. And the lore and everything, they focused too much on.
Yeah, and just a lot of, like, again, the unnecessary calls to the dad. You didn't need 3 times to call him in the span of going to the house just for establishing shots. You didn't really need the whole backstory of the the old man telling the story in the RV, and then later on retelling that story to the kids, you know, in the house.
Yeah.
You know, you could have just had him walk in there and then have that later. But again, I'm just assuming this is just a small thing done on, you know, whenever they had time. Again, there's no information out there, so it's just all speculative. And, you know, maybe just, you know, the script wasn't all there, and, like, again, seems like things were missing here and there, so it kind of was uneven at parts. And, you know, maybe there's missing, you know, deleted scenes, and he just, like, you know, we don't need that, but then, like, he's missing up, like, crucial things later on in the film that he forgot to take out for reasons unknown. It just felt, again, a little uneven in parts, and it's just, like, again, it's not a terrible movie by any means, but it's not good either, so it's right there in the middle, where, like, the idea is pretty solid, but it's just messy with everything that they're trying to perceive with the scope of the film and the mask history and everything else, because they're trying to do so much with so little, and it kind of hurts it a little bit, because it's just, again, trying your best to make something, and it's just like parts work, other things don't, and it's just the scale of everything just kind of hurts it and takes it back a little, where it's like, well, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't good. I mean, it's
right.
Messy, and that's technically that's the film. I mean, it's just it has moments where I'm interested in it, and then it's just, you know, as Ian said, it just gets you out of the film for a while. Like, where are we at? Where are we going? And it's just like we're back to square one again, where we're stuck in a room. Now Brad's hiding in the bathtub for some reason, and then, oh, this person's wearing the mask, and then he stabs himself for some reason, and then the mask is gone, and then some reason they're there, and then some reason they're here, and then it's just like it's a never-ending cycle. Like, some reason, now they're here, now they're there, and now we're going to do this, and now we're going to do that. And there's just, like, they don't give it enough, as we mentioned, there's not enough time for it to breathe and establish anything. And the things that it wants to establish, like all the phone calls and all the other stuff, like they take too long on, you know, the RV with the two friends going to the house and calling the friend, you know, the doctor, the father of Lynn, and all this other stuff, and it's just like never-ending cycle. Like, just give us a little more story, a little more action scenes with the mask, and then, like, it could have been a solid little movie. I mean, it's not terrible. Like I said, we discussed it. It's not terrible, but there's definitely more to it that should have been there, and it could have worked a little better with its execution instead of just being sort of uneven mess. And that's the downfall with the film. Like, I love it. It's obscure as fuck. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm glad I watched it, and I'm glad I have it, because, again, this is going to be one of those that's just going to be, again, until, you know, at the current time of this recording, of me and Ian reviewing this, you know, ours is the only review, and it's just going to be that for a while until it randomly shows up somewhere again. And again, it's just like not many people are going to know about this. I mean, there's not going to be that much information, but at least it's out there in the ether now if people know what the film's about, because there's nothing besides a plot synopsis. But so now we've dug deep into Mascara Diablo, discovering this almost 20-year-old film that no one's even fucking discovered. But that's the world of horror.
Right.
You always discover something. But, yeah. Ian, any final thoughts on this one?
I don't know. I think we might have kind of said anything. There's not a whole lot really to talk about other than, like, going into massive amounts of spoilers. That's going to...
And it's not really... And we do give out spoilers, but, like, again, it's just like there's not really too much spoilers to give. I mean, we pretty much went through the basis of the film, and they're just in this room looking at papers. They're in this room talking. They run through the house. They run downstairs. Someone gets the mask on. Someone gets the mask off. They die. Someone gets an axe in the back of the chest. You know, they're trying to make weapons, and another person comes in the fray, and, like, they do the same rinse and repeat situation over and over. So when someone dies, they do the same thing over and over. You know, it's just like run, hide from the mask. Someone gets the mask on, they're getting attacked. There's really not much in spoiler-heavy stuff to go about here, and you have to cut someone's head off and put it in the box. You know, that's it. And it's made by the forbidden tree in the Garden of Eden, and it was found during World War II, and it killed the guy's family, and then he put it in the box, and then it comes back like every 60 years in Costa Rica randomly. So,
yeah,
you know, you could have explained that point a little bit more than just a trivial conversation between Karen and Dr. Taylor, and I don't know. But again, for what it was, it's just like it's adequate. It's adequate for what it's trying to do. It's messy, but it's a fair watch. And, you know, it's just like, it was fine. You know, there's nothing. Again, the acting is what it is. Again, I'm not gonna sit here and knock on anybody the acting, because we've seen worse. We watched a fucking 8-year-old. All right.
Oh,
this acting's fine. You know, this acting's fucking fine. You know. You know, that's the bar, you know, when we watch a film with a 8-year-old. But nonetheless, you know, it's like, trust me, we've seen some shit. You know, that and the kid from Jacko. But so I'm not gonna knock on the acting. Again, it was from 2005. The cameras are what they are for 2005, low budget. You know, I'm not gonna knock the video quality. All right. It's what it was for the time, just being, I have a film camera in my house, I'm going to shoot something on the weekend. I'm not holding that to it. It's just that the story is just uneven, messy in its execution. It has a grand idea. I like the idea. For a second there, I was like, is this going to be sort of like, you know, like a horror version? You know, again, I was like thinking of The Mask with Jim Carrey. Like, is this going to be sort of like a horror version of The Mask again? You know, sort of like You Might Be the Killer. But it kind of goes in a different route. And I was like, maybe it's Nightmare Man. Maybe this came out, Nightmare Man came out like a year or two later after this anyway. So I was like, maybe it's like an early concept for Nightmare Man. And sort of in a vein kind of does. But again, this one has more scope and lore to it than the Nightmare Man. But it's in the same vein in a sense. So if you kind of dug that, I mean, it's fine. But it's like it's not terrible to be bad, you know, and like so bad it's good. It's just it's fine, you know, it's okay. And there's a lot of issues with it, and I can't, you know, again, I'm looking at it as a film, and again, you can, of course, you can knock points off, and again, it for someone not tooting our own horns, but in the vein of like what me and Ian have done for the past 10 years in reviewing all these films and these low-budget obscurities, just lost the time. Like, we have an understanding and know, like, what is and what isn't. You know, like, we're not going to fault that because, again, we've seen a lot of shit. And I'm not going to fault that to the film of the detriments that it's trying to do, you know, all the things that it has. But as a film, it has an okay pace. It kind of loses its way a few moments here and there because, like, plots don't converge well or are missing that don't make crucial sense to the story. But the idea behind everything, the mask, the lore, the backstory, it's a fine watch. You know, it's fine. It's just like, whatever, you know. It's not one of those where we're sitting here and, like, bashing our heads into thumbtacks or into the wall, you know, just like, get it over with. I don't want to be in this world of this plane of existence anymore. It's not that bad. I mean, for what it was, it's an interesting obscurity, you know. And it's fine for what it is. And again, it has its issues, as most films. And again, this is made in 2005, so a lot of those issues are really pertinent to what kind of hinders it a little bit. But I don't think I can really express any more. You know, I'm trying to, you know, give everyone a clear understanding of how the film kind of perceives itself. But there's, you know, the issues are glaring, and it's hard not to talk about, you know, we're not going down bullet points here. You know, we're just trying to, like, we're not going to talk bad about the acting. We've seen worse. We're not going to talk about the video camera. I mean, a lot of people are going to look at that and, like, oh, my God, this is terrible. You know, like, it's not that terrible. We've seen worse. And, again, being in the horror genre, you have to live through and experience the highs and lows, and this one is not. Again, it's average. I would say it's like a 5. You know, it's not too terrible. It's right down the middle, straight in the middle. It has ideas, but it's messy with what it's wanting to do. But you know, again, I'm rambling now, just repeating the same stuff over and over. But Ian, before we get off here again, like, any final thoughts? If not, we're gonna call this a show.
Yeah, I have nothing else really to say, because I think we both kind of just rambled on to, and I think we're hitting the wall, and we're just going to be bouncing off the wall if we keep going. So I guess this would be good.
That's going to do it for our review of Mascara Diablo from 2005 from Michael Fischa, director of Death Spa, A Mom is a Werewolf, among other things. But those are his most well-known films. And again, this one, it's obscurity. And again, I have no idea. You probably had to buy it directly from him, because there is a website on the back of the DVD. But I don't even know if that goes to his website or not, because that doesn't exist anymore. So it's just one of those weird ones that just showed up. And I'm glad to have discussed it on the show, because I love doing that. And it just gets it more, again, if people want to see it, I mean, as with most of these Boneyard reviews, I provide a copy to Ian. I'm able to provide a ways to those interested in watching it, so you can just message the all the pages, contact, Horror Night Oasis, Facebook, Instagram, and I will provide a means for those interested in wanting to check it out for themselves and form their own opinion. For us, we pretty much discussed it. And Ian, like as always, it's always great talking with you for these going on 10
back
years.
at you.
And I wouldn't, again, I mentioned it earlier, I mentioned it again, I wouldn't change it. We've grown, our bond as friends. Again, it's not, in-person friendship as you would, like to have an in-person friendship, but I still think we have a pretty good understanding of each other, and we just enjoy our time. Again, it's short, almost an hour, but it's just fun to, shoot the shit and talk movies.
Yeah.
That's what we've been doing for going on 10 years, and to hit 300, again, it's something with someone you enjoy being, having a friend talking back and forth with.
Yeah, this has just been a crazy ride, and I'm honestly glad that you and I have continued to do this, no matter, all the moves I've done, all the phone numbers, every little drama I've had, and we both had, really.
We've had some interesting dilemmas here and there, but, again, that's personal matters. That's between, that's friendship matters.
Exactly.
We don't give out everything out there. I mean, just like, again, you bring it up here and there, getting, the ex-girlfriends, the wives, the engagements, the children, and all that stuff. I mean, we don't even really get deep dive into that, and that's not supposed to happen on the air. But it's just, conversations come up here and there with your wife, and it's just, again, it's out there, on the shows where it's like, but a lot of shit's went down, to say the least. And mentioning, again, that's life. And just out of, and we're here to put that aside for 45 minutes a week. Used to be more, but we had to scale that down a little bit because of, again, issues. But nonetheless, it's been a ride, and I enjoyed every minute of it, the ups and downs, and the interesting films and marathons and all the shit that we've done, interviews, and again, I love everything that we do, and I love discovering and reviewing these random, rare, obscure movies that no one else is reviewing out there. And that, again, it's awesome. I'm glad to have someone to shoot the shit with on those films, because, again, no one would know about this, if I just lost, all interest in the radio show and didn't do anything. Like, there's a lot of films out there that no one would have, talked about, like Radioactive Flesh-Eating Force. Who the fuck cares, There's stuff out there, all these films we reviewed. One ad, who the fuck cares? Woodstock Holiday, there's a lot of shit out there we reviewed. But nonetheless, Ian, it's been great, and I'm glad we got to review this one. And there's going to be more. But that's going to do it for our episode 300 of Horror Night Oasis. So we thank you for listening, and we will see you next time for more episodes of Horror Night Oasis.
Good night.